All right, everybody, I'm back. Currently, I've got a couple heaters going, and we're gonna get a crankcase pressed together. This is the section that I will be replacing. Here's the chunk that was busted out of the front. You can see the JB weld. They didn't do bad, but you can tell they just put a piece of tape over this and then JB welded over that. I'm halfway impressed and halfway disappointed. I'm just kind of right in the middle. I kind of wish I knew what crushed it, but that's, I guess, not for me to know right now. All right, let me get another grease rag ready. All right, so what I've got going on here, here's the second one, and I was not aware of this before, but this one looks like it was stored maybe in New Orleans, maybe after a hurricane or something. Look at all that pitting right there. There's a little bit, not where the bearing sits, but way in the back. I've wire wheeled the crap out of this, cleaned it up. I've wiped it out 2 or 3 times, blasted it with brake clean. So we're good there. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this. All right, so what I've got here is my bearing, sorry, not bearing, my gasket seal kit right here. That's 1128-007-1052. That is for a MS 460-046. I've got a brand new OEM steel bearing. That's 9523-003-4266 for an 046. And I forget the number on this one, but this is a genuine steel bearing as well. All right, so this one I'm going to put the, I like to put the plastic races to the back so that the bearings are unimpeded whenever they're running. All right, there it is. All right, got that in there real quick. I recently had a comment the other day on one of my videos about heat guns being a better alternative to mechanical advantage. Basically what I do, I use bolts and pullers to pull the crankcase together. That is my preferred method. If you like doing heat guns, I have no problem with that. It is another good way to do it, and I have had to do it in the past when I don't have a puller that will work for whatever saw I'm working on. But I did want to make a point as to one of the reasons I prefer mechanical advantage while I'm doing this, and that would be that right now outside my shed it is literally 37 degrees Fahrenheit, which I realize in certain places is not that cold. But I can pull this together. What I might do sometime is do a time lapse on a video, but I can pull one of these together in about 20 or 30 minutes, where if I did it with a heat gun, I would have to heat it for about 10 or 15 minutes for each piece that I'm pulling together, which is doable. I have done it with Husqvarna's, like I said, when I don't have a puller. But it's not my preferred method because I can just do this and be done with it quickly. All right, got that real quick. Now, what I might do in an upcoming video, I've got 2 crankcases I'm gonna build. One's I believe a 460 or an 046 crankcase, and the other one is a 044 or 440. I think it's an 044. I might do that and just either speed it up or just do a time lapse where I move the camera back so you can see my vise, which is what I was doing just now. I was using my vise to pull that together. and just kind of show you guys kind of how quickly I can do it in like 15 minutes. All right, there we go. Got that pressed together. All right. All right. Now, I think today, if I can find it real quick, I'm going to use a little bit of Durco on at least one side of the crankcase. That's not always super necessary, but I like to do it on at least one side, because if there are any imperfections that I didn't see, it tends to make it fill those voids pretty well. Now, I do have my shed up to a reasonable temperature. That doesn't mean it's more like hot in here. I had to work today, and the day started out in the mid to low 20s today, Fahrenheit again. And that's not bad, but I had to be bundled up for work pretty well. I was working outside all day. So I'm still mildly bundled up, even with the heaters running. It's not bad. All right. Put this gasket on here. Get the holes lined up. Now, one of the reasons I like to do that is it essentially glues the gasket down for while I'm working on this. All right. Now, the way I do this is a little bit different than the intended way to do it. I'll put a flat washer down, piece of tube, all right, and that right there is my preferred method. And you can use a bar wrench on this. It works really well. There we go. Let me turn that down just a little bit. Now, something I do is I'll leave that tight until I get the at least 4 of the screws snugged up. I normally have it clocked in such a way that it does block the back screw, but that's the way I like to do that right there. Found that the cylinder has light aluminum transfer. We're going to see if it's scored or not. I don't think it is, but overall this thing is turning out pretty nice. Okay, just a little bit snug, not bad. And it's not bad. I mean, I can do it one-handed, but it's still just got a little bit of a side tension on it. So I think what we'll do real quick, right here, 1, 2, 3. Oh, you see that? There we go. Look, we'll watch. I'm gonna watch the counterweights do it real quick. I'm holding against the counterweight. See how it's working by itself? That's perfect right there. That was one smack with a dead blow hammer. That's plastic right there, so it's not gonna tear it up. That's one of the mistakes some people will make, is they go to whaling on one of these with a metal hammer. Tin Man recently fixed the 064 crank. Had a chunk of that broke off right there. He had to use a MIG welder and a lathe to reshape it because somebody was striking the crankshaft with a hammer. That's not good. Okay, I'm gonna put 2 seals in and then I'm gonna call it an evening because I gotta get ready for work. Basically what I do sometimes is whenever it gets cold like it is, I will shower before bed, which I normally wash up before I go to bed anyway, but basically I do all my shaving and stuff so that I don't have to go out in the cold with you know, a damp face or just out of the shower. That doesn't feel good sometimes, especially not whenever it's 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So I got my little piece of foil ready. We're gonna load this with a little bit of grease inside of the lip of the seal. Just inside the rubber right there. Now you remember there's a groove right down here in the crankshaft? Well, that groove could prolapse the seal. So what we're gonna do real quick, take that, slide it over. All right, I had to pull that out a little bit and get it squared up a little bit, but I'm out of the groove. Place that and that. Now I'm not going very hard on this. I'm going to keep it rather mild. Just one finger is what I'm using to move it. Right there. And I don't want to pull any harder than that because what will end up happening is I'll end up shifting that crank, and you already saw how that crank was just about perfect. I think we've discussed in the past, yes, that's going to be about a 5/8 socket if I remember correctly. There we go. Next seal. Just a little bit of grease. You don't need a lot, just need a little bit. Well, I was wrong. It is in fact a 9/16. Real quick, 1, 2, 3. Perfect, right there. All right. That is a fully assembled screw cap type 046 crankcase. That is just about perfect right there. I'm happy with this. There's a little bit of load from the seals now. I like it. All right, guys, I'm going to call it right there for tonight. All right, we'll talk to you later. Take it easy. Goodbye.